My name's Daniel Hall, and I'm from San Diego, California. I can remember fishing here in San Diego at Cuyamaca Lake. It's for children. Anybody under the age of 15 can go for free. Most of my time spent at fishing that I did like was actually in Oklahoma. And I remember fishing the ponds there, and the ponds have a lot of catfish, and they're good eating. The Kern River has some of the best fishing that I've enjoyed. I've caught some of the biggest fish that I love to eat out there. It's in the Sierra Nevada. I know some history that started where there was techniques involved, just a pole and a line. And the reels came in probably in the European times when it was a lot like what we have here, just a reel that reels it up. It doesn't have the open face that most people are known for fishing with now. And they had all different fish to catch out there in the European mountains. They'd have a lot of different trout. You'd have salmon and some of the Atlantic salmon. There's many different techniques. Most people do open face reel. It's just a reel and a rod that most people just throw down with weights. Fly fishing, which is the technique I really enjoy, is takes spey casting. Takes a different technique of casting the line instead of a weight. And there is a English version of fly fishing where they just stuck a feather on a hook and snagged fish as the run came up. There's so many different techniques of casting lines. Most of it is spey casting and doing a back and forth motion to get the line false casting back and forth, and then it finally lets out. Or you can do roll casting. What lures the fish is the way the fly actually acts or looks like a insect. We've got flies, we've got nymphs or larvae, the larva stage underwater. You could make them look like fish, small bait fish. It could be a lure like that or more like a fly and an insect, and the patterns that you tie would need to be looking like a segmented piece of an insect with some wings, and that's it. Most of the equipment you need is definitely you need a fly rod. This happens to be a bamboo handmade bamboo rods are mostly old. This is a pretty old setup, but catches fish great. And you'll need to have, usually you'll have a setup, a bottom piece. It'll usually be 3 pieces or 4 pieces nowadays. Sometimes I have what is a 2-piece, and those are bigger. You can see how big it is. But this, you'll see, it's old, and the older bamboo, the better, because that means it hasn't snapped. And you put a small little reel on the back, and you get your reel, which has a fly. I have my fly attached. It's a small damsel fly. You can see how small that guy is. And the hook is there. It's just very small. And some people go, how do you catch fish with such a small hook? But it happens. Big fish can happen. This is what you need to cast. This is the heavier part of the line. When it's long, it gives a better cast, and the thinness, I think it just comes from style. You do want them to have a lot of bendability so you can cast that, that line, a little more finesse in it. The harder and straighter it is, it's going to be able to handle much more weight. When casting a pole like this, there's just a feel of very finesse, very light tackle, nothing to it, just back and forth, great movement. The durability is wonderful. And when you catch a fish, you can see this rod really bend. The number one thing is you need to see your line out on the water. You need to know what it's doing. If you don't, you're going to lose what you're doing. You need to know, because sometimes I'm not able to see the actual, the fly at the end of the monofilament. You lose track of the monofilament, and you need to know where, especially in clear water and trout, and you're sight fishing and you could see the fish, you want to bring that fly right in front of that trout. So the best way to do it is just cast it, and you get that line right over in front of them. If it's moving water, you want to put the fly well ahead of the fish and let that thing float right down in front of him. And he'll come up, snag it, and you'll have a nice fish on your line. But with fly fishing, you do need to have some knowledge of what you're kind of going for. If you don't, you're kind of just casting out into the wind. So you're going to use something like a small stone fly, and it'll sit on top of the water because it's so light. It's made out of elk hair. You have mayflies. You can make them with practically any kind of hackle from a rooster, and it'll float, and it'll look like a mayfly as long as you get that long budded and with the intricate segmented patterns. And they also sit on the top of the water. They're just so light. And then you also can do common terrestrial insects like a bee. You can see that looks like a bee. That'll sit on top of the water too. Nymphs look like the larva stage. They have a bead, and that'll help them drop down fast. And so you can have them any type of style. These will drop a lot faster into water. And then when you get into the larger fish that you are going to angle for, you can try for something like a crayfish. And see, this crayfish will have a big weight. So you'll have a little weight. Actually, fly fishing sometimes calls for weight, so you can get them to the bottom faster. But you're still using the cast because it's still not enough for a regular pole to cast. It's not going to get you far. So you're still going to need a good cast, but yet you want to get this small thing across a nice river for some crayfish. And sometimes they hit crayfish. There's so many trout in California, some tuna, halibut, a lot of different sea fish are great. All kinds of bass. You got white sea bass, you got spotted bay bass, you've got, you can name all kinds of different bass. Sheephead, I love sheephead, catching those big guys out there. Rockfish are really good eating for off of Point Loma. You could go all day on different trout. Cloud River, there's Kern River rainbow, there's golden, little Kern golden, there's regular rainbow, there's lake trout, there's Chinook, there's brown trout is wonderful to catch. They get big quick. There's brown trout, little brown trout. By next year you come back, you know there's going to be big brown trout. Usually bait fishing is just something that people do around here. It's usually squid that they cut up, and that's what you were seeing. And you could really try for some fly fishing. You just got to know where the halibut are going to be.